Have you ever wondered what's lurking down there? A place where pressure can crush anything, where darkness reigns forever. In the depths of the Mariana Trench, a team of scientists dared to listen to strange echoes, rhythms that don't belong to our world. But what they didn't know is that they weren't just listening. They were being listened to. And from the darkness, the abyss answered. Do you have the courage to uncover the terrifying secret hidden beneath these black waves? Join us as we pull back the veil of fear. Right now, Dr. Anya Sharma, a linguist with eyes sharp as razors, could still feel the horrific resonance of torn metal echoing in her bones. It wasn't just the sound of mechanical failure, it was the sound of an invasion, of something ancient and brutal shredding through the reinforced steel hull of the research vessel Triton, like a predator tearing into its prey. Where Professor Kenji Tanaka once stood, now there was only a dark, coagulated pool of blood spreading across the shattered floor of the command deck, strewn with broken equipment and twisted debris. His pale face, once filled with a lifetime of passion for uncovering the ocean's secrets, was now lifeless. The eyes that once sparkled with curiosity were closed forever, unable to witness the terror they had awakened. Anya struggled to push herself upright, pain lancing through the back of her skull, her vision blurred with trauma and hot blood trailing down her temple. The stench of burnt wires mixed with the coppery tang of blood hung heavy in the air, a suffocating perfume of death. She remembered the tense yet hopeful weeks before, the electric thrill of hearing those strange, haunting sounds rising from the Mariana Trench. Rhythms with intent. Structures so complex they seemed impossible. An ancient, alien language clawing its way up from the deepest pit on Earth, from a time untouched by mankind. She and Kenji, alongside a brilliant crew of scientists and engineers, had believed they stood at the edge of history, a turning point in humanity's quest to understand the universe and their own planet's hidden soul. But then came the first images from Hercules, their brave mechanical eye peering into the abyss. What it revealed didn't resemble the grotesque deep-sea creatures they'd imagined in their boldest scientific dreams. No, it showed vast obsidian structures, impossibly massive and defying the laws of physics, stretching like ghost cities abandoned beneath the sea. Their sharp angles and unnatural geometry pulsed with a cold, internal glow, like phosphorescent scars across the skin of a sleeping leviathan, now awakened. And then they came. Not creatures by any earthly biological definition, but shadows made real, pure darkness in motion. Sometimes they melted seamlessly into the gloom, part of the abyss itself. Other times they took shape, grotesque forms lined with thin, hair-like tendrils, each one radiating silent strength and terrifying grace. Across their jet-black skin, no light reflected. Instead, bioluminescent symbols pulsed in perfect sync with the sounds from the speakers. But these weren't neutral frequencies anymore. They were glowing threats, like 1,000 soulless eyes studying and judging the intruders. The first impact against the hull was almost delicate, a probing knock. But then the strikes became relentless, furious, as if a legion of cold, slimy hands were clawing and ripping at the vessel's defenses, determined to tear open the fragile barrier separating humanity from the infinite dark. Their high-frequency acoustic shields, once the pride of human ingenuity, were useless. Their signal disruptors couldn't pierce the strange, unknowable energy surrounding the abyssal beings. Anya crawled from the wreckage, heart pounding like a bird trapped in a cage. Through the haze, she saw the shadows slither into the control room, grotesque shapes gliding on countless tendrils. One by one, they dragged the screaming crew into darkness, their cries smothered by the thick, death-scented air. One tendril, black, slick, and cold as deep-sea ice, slithered through the rubble. It wrapped around her ankle, sending a jolt of paralyzing chill up her spine. She clenched her jaw, holding back a scream. Even the smallest sound might give her away. The glowing green sigils on the tendril pulsed slowly, methodically, like it was scanning her, reading every vibration of her terror, savoring her helplessness. And in that moment of horror, Anya remembered Tanaka's final whisper, raspy and strained as the ship quaked violently. "I'm afraid this isn't a greeting." Now she understood. The abyss didn't want to be discovered. It wanted to be left alone, worshipped in silence. Its ancient dwellers weren't curious. They were angry. Humanity's signals hadn't reached another civilization. They had disturbed a sleeping god. Clutching a cold metal wrench, her only weapon, Anya braced herself. It was primitive, useless, laughable against beings that defied every natural law. But deep in her chest, a spark remained. Fragile, defiant, a flicker of hope. She wouldn't die easily. She would fight. For Kenji, for the crew, for a world arrogant enough to awaken an unfathomable wrath. The engine's groan faded into silence. The only sounds now were the moans of the ocean and the shrill, alien frequencies echoing through the black. A cold victory song from invaders that had arrived and would never leave. Anya closed her eyes, drew in one last breath, and prepared to make her final stand in the endless dark. Thick darkness swallowed the wrecked control room whole. Anya leaned against a toppled cabinet, forcing her breath into a steady rhythm. Seawater hissed through punctures in the hull, while a dying engine's low growl echoed from somewhere far below, forming a twisted soundtrack for the oppressive silence that hung over the room. She gripped the cold wrench tighter, a crude weapon, but the only thing she had to face the predators from the dark. A faint sound stirred near the entrance. Black tendrils slithered softly across the cold metal floor. Anya froze, heart hammering like it was trying to escape her chest. Through the narrow gap between the cabinet and the wall, she watched. A shadowy mass drifted past, faint green sigils pulsing across its slick surface like a watching eye, scanning. Fear wrapped around her like ice, but so did something else, an unrelenting will to survive. She couldn't die here. Not like this. Not devoured by something no one understood. She had to make it out, to uncover what these things were, and why they were attacking. When the creature drifted behind a pile of collapsed machinery, Anya slid silently from her hiding place. The floor was slick with blood and oil. Broken glass cracked under her palms as she crawled forward, staying low, using debris to mask her movement. She moved slowly, every muscle alert, heading toward the emergency exit she vaguely remembered. Dim, flickering lights above cast jagged shadows across the corridor, distorting everything into twisted silhouettes. Around her, bodies of fallen crew members lay sprawled across the deck, their limbs tangled in black tendrils, ropes of death. Their faces were frozen in terror, eyes wide, staring into eternity. A shrill screech pierced the air right beside her. Anya whipped around. One of the creatures hovered nearby, its tendrils unfurling like whips. The glowing symbols on its body surged with intensity, radiating an eerie energy that seemed to ripple through the very air. No time to think. She swung the wrench hard. The metal struck a slick surface with a sickening thud. The creature shrieked in pain, its body flickering chaotically. It turned on her, lashing out with terrifying speed. She dodged instinctively, the brush of air from a tendril grazing her cheek like the whisper of death. She attacked again, trying to keep her distance, but they were too fast, too fluid, and they could sense her, even in pitch blackness. Then, something clicked. Every time a broken device sparked or metal clashed loudly, the creatures flinched. The symbols on their bodies dimmed. They reacted to light and sound, strong light, high-frequency noise. A plan formed. The emergency lighting was still flickering. If she could overload it, she might buy herself a window to escape. Fueled by desperate hope, Anya sprinted toward the nearest control panel, narrowly dodging a tendril that whipped past her. She slammed the wrench down, praying for a surge. A pop. Sparks exploded. Electric arcs leapt into the air. The creatures screamed, distorted, inhuman wails. Their glowing sigils faded into a dull shimmer. They recoiled, tendrils twitching erratically. Anya bolted for the exit. Her hand closed around the door handle. And then a tendril snapped around her ankle, yanking her backward. She crashed to the floor. The wrench flew from her grip. She clawed at the deck, dragged toward the shadows where they waited. In a last surge of panic, her hand closed around a shard of glass. Gritting her teeth, she drove it deep into the tendril. A deafening shriek echoed through the room. The tendril loosened. She scrambled to her feet, bolting through the hatch, leaving the snarling darkness behind. She sprinted down the narrow corridor, emergency lights strobing overhead. Her footsteps echoed like gunfire in the silence. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she couldn't stop. At an intersection, she paused, trying to orient herself. The engine room. It was toward the aft section. Maybe she could signal for help, or hide, anywhere but here. She turned left, pushing forward. When a door ahead burst open, a figure stumbled into view. "Anya!" A weak voice called. She squinted into the flickering light. Dr. Ben Carter, a biologist from their team. She'd assumed he died in the control room. "Ben, you're alive!" she gasped. Relief rushed through her, but it vanished just as fast. His skin was pale, eyes glazed. Strange black markings crawled up his arm, symbols that looked too familiar. "Anya," he whispered, his voice warped. They're inside me. Stay away." Before she could react, Ben lunged, inhumanly fast. His eyes glowed with cold, alien light. He wasn't Ben anymore. Anya staggered back, heart splitting. These things didn't just kill, they took over, twisting the living into vessels, hosts. Tears welled in her eyes, but she had no choice. With a choked cry, she swung the wrench. Hard. Ben collapsed, silent. She stood trembling, staring down at what was left of her colleague, her friend. The horror of it all clawed at her chest. They weren't just fighting monsters. They were fighting the loss of themselves. This wasn't just a physical war. It was a war of identity, a battle for the soul. Anya turned away and ran, toward the engine room, toward whatever slim chance remained. With every step, she carried the weight of the fallen, the terror still clinging to the ship's walls, and one burning truth. The abyss had answered. Now it was her turn to respond. As she neared the end of the hallway, strange noises began to seep through the metal door ahead. Not the low hum of machinery she hoped for, but eerie, high-pitched screeches, like the wounded moans of something massive and alive. Anya pressed her ear to the cold steel, heart pounding. Mixed with the screeches were sharp, crashing sounds, as if something inside was tearing the room apart. A cold dread crept into her chest. Was the engine room still intact? Was anyone even still alive in there? She slowly cracked the door open, just enough to see. Her heart seized. The room was a wreck. Steam hissed from ruptured pipes. Wires sparked like angry fireflies. And in the chaos, two of the shadow creatures hovered, their tendrils coiled around the limp body of a motionless engineer, his body twitching faintly. Another creature lashed out at the main console, its glowing sigils flashing violently, as if trying to hijack or destroy the ship's systems. Anya knew a direct fight would be suicide. They were too fast, too strong, too coordinated. She needed a plan, a sliver of an edge. Her eyes landed on a nearby tool cabinet. Maybe, just maybe, there was something better than a wrench in there. She decided to take the risk. Moving as silently as possible, Anya crept into the engine room, ducking behind fallen beams and shattered machinery. Every movement was calculated, every breath held. She was nearly to the cabinet when one of the creatures turned its head sharply, its luminescent markings flaring. It sensed her, and it screamed. No time. Anya lunged for the cabinet, yanked the door open, and grabbed everything she could: a high-powered flashlight, a compact fire extinguisher, and a box of signal flares. That was all. The creatures surged toward her. Anya flicked on the flashlight and blasted them with its beam. Agonized shrieks filled the room. The light scalded them, their glowing symbols dimming as they recoiled, their tendrils curling like burnt paper. Light. That was it. They were born of the abyss, and the abyss hated brightness. Seizing the moment, Anya tossed the fire extinguisher at one of them, filling the space with a thick white cloud. While they flailed blindly, she lit a flare, red sparks bursting like a sunrise in hell. The creatures wailed and thrashed in panic. Anya ran. She slammed the door behind her and jammed the wrench into the handle. It wouldn't hold forever, but it might buy her a few seconds. She raced down the corridor, her mind spinning. The control room was destroyed. The engine room was compromised. Where could she go now? Where on this ship was still safe, still functional? Then she remembered. The comms center. It was upstairs, near the deck. Maybe, just maybe, it still worked. Maybe she could call for help. Anya bounded up the metal stairs, boots clanging as she climbed. The upper corridor, by some miracle, was mostly intact. Emergency lights still flickered, casting long, skeletal shadows on the walls. She found the door to the communications room. Locked. Her eyes scanned the hallway. Mounted on the wall was a fire axe. Without hesitation, she yanked it free and brought it down on the lock. Once, twice, 3 times. The door gave way. She stepped into a room filled with tangled cables, shattered screens, and in one corner, a satellite comm station that looked intact. She rushed to it. Power still ran through it. She could have cried. Anya powered it up and began scanning frequencies, fingers flying over the controls. Static, code, fragments. She searched desperately for an emergency band, hoping someone was out there. Behind her, down the hallway, she heard them again. The hiss, the scrape, the whisper of something gliding along the walls. They were coming. She worked faster. Lights blinked. A weak signal popped onto the screen. She locked onto it and began broadcasting. "This is research vessel Triton, sending a mayday. We are under attack. Unknown entities. Mariana Trench. We need immediate assistance." Her voice cracked. She repeated the message over and over, embedding the ship's coordinates, her tone raw with desperation. She didn't know if anyone was listening, but she had to try. Then, the door burst open. Two shadow creatures lunged in, tendrils writhing like demonic whips. Anya grabbed the fire axe. This was it. No more running. She struck one across the body. Its scream pierced the room. But they kept coming. Fast, furious, unrelenting. Tendrils lashed out. She dodged, swung again. The light from the screens and flashlight danced across their dark, glistening forms, making their glowing symbols flicker violently. A tendril snagged her arm, tight, crushing. She cried out, dropping the axe. The second creature lunged, its tendrils reaching for her throat. In a flash of memory, Anya remembered the flare in her coat pocket. She yanked it out, struck the lighter, and let it burn. The flame seared a tendril. The creature howled, releasing her arm. She shoved it back and hurled the burning flare into the second one's face. Explosive sparks lit the room like firecrackers. The creatures convulsed, stumbling backward. The strange symbols on their bodies sputtered wildly. Anya didn't wait. She bolted from the room, slammed the door, and locked it. It wouldn't stop them for long, but it didn't have to. She slumped against the door, chest heaving. She had sent the message. She had fought them off, barely. Now, all she could do was wait. Wait. And pray someone, anyone, heard her cry from the depths. But a darker thought crept in. Who would dare descend into the Mariana Trench, knowing what waited in the dark? And would they reach her before the abyss claimed her too? Time dragged on, heavy and suffocating inside the cramped communications room. Anya leaned against the locked door, listening to the strange sounds echoing from the hallway outside. Shrill screeches, soft thuds against the walls, and occasionally, loud crashes, like something massive was clawing at the ship's hull. The distress signal had been sent, but in this terrifying isolation, Anya had no way of knowing if anyone had actually received it. Exhaustion began to wear down her resolve. The wound on her head throbbed relentlessly, and the bruises and cuts across her body served as painful reminders of the horrors she'd already survived. But the greatest fear wasn't the creatures outside. It was the overwhelming sense of being alone and forgotten in this endless darkness. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the hallway. The comms room door shook violently. Anya jerked upright, tightening her grip on the wrench. They'd found a way through. There was no more room to hide. She backed up against the far wall, heart pounding, preparing herself for the final fight. The door burst open. Two of the pitch-black creatures lunged inside, tendrils whipping like deadly lashes. With a battle cry, Anya charged forward, swinging her wrench with everything she had. The fight was brutal. In the confined space, Anya darted between consoles and debris, dodging strikes and landing blows whenever she saw an opening, striking at weak spots she had learned to recognize. But they were too fast, too strong. One tendril wrapped tightly around her arm, yanking the wrench from her hand. Another reached for her throat. Just then, a deafening explosion rocked the ship. A blinding white light pierced through the cracks in the walls. The creatures screamed in agony. Their bioluminescent symbols blinked erratically, then dimmed. They recoiled, tendrils twitching like they were burning. Anya shielded her eyes and looked toward the source of the light. Through the shattered hull, she saw a glowing silhouette approaching across the inky black sea. A ship? A voice echoed through the Triton's PA system, strong, commanding, and full of hope. "This is the rescue vessel Poseidon. We received your distress call. Hold on, we're coming." Relief flooded Anya's chest. They were saved, but the creatures weren't finished. They snarled and snapped, their tendrils lashing wildly. As the Poseidon drew closer, its floodlights cut through the ocean's gloom. Anya spotted figures in protective suits racing toward Triton in high-speed boats. But then, from beneath the black waves, dozens, no, hundreds of shadowy shapes began to rise. They swarmed around Triton, their tendrils spreading like a monstrous web. "What the hell is that?" a panicked voice called out over the comms. "There's too many of them!" someone shouted from one of the speedboats as a massive tendril smashed against their hull. Anya's heart sank. Their distress signal hadn't just summoned help, it had summoned the Horde. The Abyss didn't want survivors. It wanted to claim everything. Inside the comms room, the creatures renewed their attack. Anya knew she had to stall them long enough for the rescue team to reach her. With a scream of defiance, she snatched up her wrench again and threw herself back into the fray, swinging at the darkness with every ounce of strength left in her body. Outside, chaos reigned. Boats weaved between the monstrous tentacles, searchlights flickering across the waves. Gunfire cracked through the air as the rescue team fought their way toward Triton. At last, a squad of rescuers reached the ship, breaching the door to the comms room with advanced gear, energy rifles glowing with green pulses. Bolts of light tore into the creatures, burning holes through them, their bodies dissolving into inky sludge as they shrieked in pain. The team overwhelmed them quickly. "Are you all right?" one of the soldiers shouted, rushing to Anya's side. She nodded weakly, her body trembling from exhaustion and pain. "There were so many." "We know," he said grimly. "They want the ship, and whatever's still on it." They lifted Anya and carried her out. As the speedboat pulled away from the wreckage, Anya looked back at Triton, now completely surrounded by the black creatures, their tendrils locked onto the hull like giant parasites. "We can't leave it," Anya said, voice cracking. "There might still be people in there." "We searched," the soldier replied. "You're the only one we found. Triton is lost." As the boat sped away, Anya watched in horror as a massive creature rose from the depths. Glowing sigils across its body blazed like a warning. It lashed out, reaching toward them. "Go, full throttle!" the pilot screamed. The boat surged forward, narrowly avoiding the monster's grasp. Triton disappeared behind them, swallowed by the sea, and by whatever had claimed it. Anya had survived, but at an unthinkable cost. Kenji was gone, the crew was gone, the Triton was gone, and now humanity knew something was down there, something ancient, something angry. Back aboard the Poseidon, Anya was rushed to the medical bay. She lay on the bed, staring blankly at the ceiling, the events replaying in her mind like a nightmare loop. A high-ranking officer entered the room. "Dr. Sharma," he said solemnly, "what happened down there was horrifying. We'll conduct a full investigation." Anya met his gaze. Her eyes were tired, but clear. "You don't get it," she said softly. "They weren't reaching out to us. They were claiming us, and they're still down there." The officer fell silent, then replied, "We'll take action. We won't let this happen again." But Anya wasn't so sure. As Poseidon sailed back to safe waters, Anya stood by the window, staring at the spot where Triton had vanished. The ocean was calm again, silent, but she knew better now. The abyss was watching, waiting, and the real war had only just begun. The days that followed aboard the rescue vessel Poseidon passed in heavy silence. Anya Sharma drifted like a ghost through the sterile halls, her body healing, but her mind still trapped in the abyss. Over and over again, she replayed the horrors in her head. The black tendrils, the cold bioluminescent glyphs, and Kenji's lifeless face. When Poseidon finally reached port, Anya was transferred to a classified government research facility. There, she endured endless interrogations, forced to recount the nightmare aboard Triton again and again. Scientists and military officials listened with a mix of disbelief and dread, trying to make sense of something far beyond their understanding. But Anya knew the truth. She had seen them, fought them. The creatures from the Mariana Trench weren't a hallucination or a freak natural phenomenon. They were an ancient, merciless civilization. And they had declared war. After weeks of detainment and questioning, Anya was finally released. But she wasn't the same woman who had boarded the Triton. The terror had etched itself into her soul. She withdrew from the world, haunted by nightmares of darkness and slick, writhing limbs. But silence didn't sit well with her. Anya knew she had a responsibility to warn humanity about the threat still lurking in the depths. She began to write, documenting everything she had witnessed aboard Triton. Her journal became a testimony, a desperate plea to a world that didn't yet believe. At first, no one did. Her story was dismissed as the ramblings of a trauma survivor. But then, the whispers started. Reports of strange signals from deep-sea research subs, unexplained disappearances, sonar anomalies, fishermen with wild stories about massive shadows rising from the depths. Piece by piece, the world began to listen. Anya Sharma wasn't crazy. The threat was real. A secret arms race began. Nations covertly developed advanced deep-sea weaponry. Special forces were trained to confront something they still couldn't comprehend. But beneath all the technology, a chilling truth remained. How do you fight an enemy you don't understand? One that has existed in the darkness for millions of years. Anya, reluctantly, became an advisor. She shared what little knowledge she had. Weaknesses, behavior patterns, warning signs. But she knew it was a drop in the ocean. Years passed. Humanity lived with a quiet, constant dread. Deep-sea zones were declared off-limits. The abyss became forbidden territory. Then, one day, it happened. A Russian nuclear submarine vanished without a trace near the Mariana Trench. No distress call, no debris, just silence. Panic swept across the globe. There was no longer any doubt. The creatures were no longer defending. They were attacking. In response, a global military alliance was formed. All remaining resources were thrown into a final stand. A fleet, massive, advanced, and desperate, was dispatched to the trench, armed with humanity's most powerful weapons. Anya stood on the deck of a destroyer, staring into the endless Black Sea. The cold wind tossed her silver-streaked hair. She was older now, but her eyes still burned with that same haunted fire. "Do we stand a chance, Doctor?" Sharma, an admiral beside her, asked quietly. Anya shook her head. "We trespassed on their territory. We woke them up. And now, I fear we're paying the price for our arrogance. The battle that followed beneath the waves was apocalyptic. Explosions ripped through the ocean depths. Green energy beams tore into the black creatures, but they were endless. From every shadow, more emerged, coordinated, relentless, enraged. Warships, monuments to human power, were crushed like toys beneath massive tendrils. Screams echoed through the comms. The ocean was on fire. Anya watched in silence, powerless. Her warning had come too late. After days of brutal combat, the fleet retreated, heavily damaged, bloodied, defeated. The Mariana Trench fell silent once more, but it was no longer just a chasm. It was a battlefield, a scar on Earth itself. Anya returned to land, her body frail and her spirit worn. She lived out her final days in solitude, plagued by the knowledge that humanity had poked a sleeping god. The world moved on, but a shadow had settled over it. A permanent dread. People now looked at the sea not with wonder, but with fear. Because beneath those dark waters, something monstrous still waited, watching, biding its time. The abyss had answered, and it wasn't a greeting. It was a warning, a declaration of war, and humanity, in its pride and curiosity, had paid dearly for listening to the whispers from the dark. Anya Sharma died on a stormy night, rain lashing the windows of her quiet home. Beside her bed lay a yellowed journal, its final page bearing a single trembling line. "They're still down there, waiting." And deep in the Mariana Trench, buried under crushing pressure and eternal night, the glowing glyphs pulsed across the skin of ancient black creatures, a reminder to the world above that some doors, once opened, never close again.